it's Jess from Peace Love Books, and same here with my June wrap-up. I read a total of 17 books this month. A good chunk of them were audiobooks. I think I've read 4 or 5 audiobooks. I have discovered audiobooks and I love them. I listen to them while I sew for my Etsy shop. I listen to them while I do the dishes, while I walk my dogs. And I have been listening to a lot of my favorite books that I forget that I haven't read in a while, so I do have a lot of those to talk about. I am in the middle of 2 different books right now, and it's the 30th. I leave tomorrow on vacation though, so I want to get this filmed today, so I may finish a couple today because I have like 200 pages left of one book, and then my audiobook I only have 2 parts left of, but this is all I have right now, so I'm going to share with you the 17 books I read. The first one I finished was an audiobook, and that is Bully by Penelope Douglas. I was not a huge fan of this narrator. The biggest thing that bothered me was she said, when you do UGH, I think like, ugh, like, oh my gosh. The narrator did ugh. That's how she would say UGH when they talked about it, so it was a little annoying to me. But this is about Tate and Jared. This is one of my favorite books. It is Penelope Douglas, who's one of my favorite authors, and Jared is a bully to Tate, and she leaves for a year. She goes to, I think, France or something to study abroad, comes back her senior year of high school and is ready to face Jared head on, and they obviously have a romance. It's so good, 5 out of 5 stars, one of my favorites. The next book I read was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This is a book that I already have a book review for, so I'll go ahead and link that down below, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. It is about a girl who has Asperger's, and so Stella is her name. She doesn't really know how to be in a relationship or be intimate with men, so she hires a male escort named Michael, and the relationship starts from there. Michael is just the sweetest ever. I fell head over heels for him. He's so patient with Stella. And of course, whenever there's a male escort story, they always are doing it for a reason. We get to meet his family. Fabulous, fabulous romance, and I give it a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was because a friend on Instagram told me I had to read it, and that is Lessons in Corruption by Gianna Darling. This is a motorcycle romance, and it is about Cressida, or she goes by Cress, and she is in a marriage that she's not happy in. She feels like she's belittled, she doesn't get to be herself, and so she ends that marriage, and it's actually a guy who's older, who's like her dad's best friend, and her parents like encouraged her to be in that relationship, and I think she got into it when she was like 18 or something is when they like married. She was super young, and so she is a teacher it takes place in Canada, so I don't know how their system works, but she teaches like different subjects at a high school, and it's a super prestigious high school, and so you have to get tested to get in there. They have a new student who is like the motorcycle gang's prodigy, and people are shocked that he's there. He's in Cressida's class, but she has not seen him yet, and she meets a biker and starts a fling with him, and then realizes that it's her student, and it is King, and he does not act like he's 18 though. He acts a lot older. It's their relationship. I give it a 4 to 5 stars. I do think it started out slow, and she was so back and forth on her feelings about the relationship. She would like realize that it's wrong and like want to pull away, but then like not want to pull away so many times that it got annoying. But I did enjoy halfway through the book and on, when it was like less about the fact that he went to school there and more about the fact that she's learning about the motorcycle gang and his family. So it was a really good read, but I'm super excited for book 2. It is King's dad's story, Zeus, so I'm really excited to read that one. The next book I read was Mal de Amores, or Lovesick by Mara White. This is a taboo romance because it's between cousins. So they are Hispanic, I believe, and they are super close because neither of them have their dads around. Both of their moms are related, I believe, and it spans through a very long time. So it starts out when the girl is like 12 or something, I want to say, and it goes through when they're in college. And so it was okay. There were times I was enjoying it. There were times I was really annoyed with the main character because she was literally obsessed with her obsession with her cousin. I wouldn't say like she's obsessed with her cousin, but like she pretty much loves him romantically, and she's obsessed with the fact that she loves her cousin. She can't love anyone else, and so that's what she does, like is obsessed with the whole book. Even in college, she like researches it and is like fanatically like whatever. She's obsessed. And it was pretty good. I will say like the story got kind of boring at times, and I still kind of felt uncomfortable because they were cousins, but I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. That's all I can say. The next book I read was One Small Thing by Erin Watt. I was sent an e-arc of this to review, and I love this. I was super wary because I was not a huge fan of their previous book that was YA. I don't know if I would consider this YA. It is a character in high school. Definitely not as racy as their Royal series, but this is about a girl whose sister passed away, and her parents are being super claustrophobic on her. They are forcing her to not be able to do stuff. They even don't want her to go off to college, to her dream schools, and so she kind of lashes out. She meets a guy and realizes that the guy had something to do with her sister's death, and so the story goes on from there. Chase was the guy, and I loved him so much. People were so mean to him, and he did not let that take him down. He was the bigger person. He didn't fight back. He just was trying to get through life, and this deals with some pretty serious questions about life, and I don't know why, but I was obsessed with this book. I read it in 2 days, could not put it down. I give it a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Order of Protection by Lexi Blake. This is book 1 in the Courting Justice series, and I previously read her Lawless series and really enjoyed it, so I was excited for this. This was marketed as a guy named Henry who's a lawyer, and he has a brief 2-week fling with this woman named Wynn, and lo and behold, Wynn is actually this heiress whose parents died when she was a baby. She was called like the miracle baby or something, and she has all this money. She doesn't have the best reputation because she was on a reality show, and she is accused of murdering her best friend, and Henry has to come in and be her lawyer and help make sure that she's not committed for the crime she didn't commit. And it was really slow. It was not what I wanted. It was like halfway through the book we finally got the murder, and it took like the first half of the book was just like them meeting each other and like agreeing to be together, and then it's like in a page like, oh yeah, and then they spent 2 weeks together and now we're done. And I would have liked to see more of those 2 weeks, and I really wanted the murder to happen a lot earlier. I just thought this should have been a lot more suspenseful and action-packed than it was, so I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I finished was an audiobook I was listening to, and that is Before Jamaica Lane by Samantha Young. This is a reread for me. If you saw my wrap up for last month, I read the first 2 books in this series on audiobook. I've read this whole series. I'm just making my way through the audiobooks. This one is my favorite. This is about Olivia, and she's a librarian, and she really likes this guy who always comes to the library, but she has no idea how to talk to him, how to talk to guys, how to feel confident about herself. Her best friend is Nate, and he is like, well, fine, I'll show you. And so he is kind of showing her the art of seduction. And of course it's a friends to lovers romance, and it is so cute. I loved Nate. I forgot so much about this and Nate's past, and it was so good. 5 out of 5 stars. I'm so happy I got to reread this and remember why I loved it so much. Then after that, I did listen to Losing It by Cora Carmack. I read this a long time ago. I want to say it was like at least 3 years ago, and forgot literally everything about it. This is about Bliss, who is I think she's a senior in college, and she is finally ready to lose it. And so she sets out to go to a bar to find someone to help her, and she finds Garrick, who is British, and he's reading Shakespeare at the bar, and she is instantly drawn to him, and he ends up being her professor. And it is that story, and it is very cute. It's super short, so it was only 8 parts in the audiobook, so it went by super fast, and I love the accent of Garrick in the audiobook, and I just really love this book. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars when I first read it. I don't know why, but I really liked it, and the fact that Bliss is actually a acting student, and so a drama student, and Garrick is a performer and is teaching their acting class, so I really liked that. And it talks about them putting on a production, and yeah, it was really good. The next book I read was the Pick What I Read Next for June, and that is Roomies by Christina Lauren. I did a whole video review on this. I'll link that down below. And this is about a girl named Holland who is obsessed with this musician she sees every day. I think she's been following him for like 6 months, and she goes out of her way just to see him perform. And then an accident happens. He ends up saving her life, and she tells her uncle, who owns this like production of something, that he would be the fabulous addition to their orchestra or whatever because he plays guitar. And they realize he's there illegally, so Holland decides to marry him so he can stay in the US. And they fall in love. So I was super disappointed in this book. I didn't really buy Calvin's feelings, the musician who I think he was Scottish or Irish, I don't remember which one, but I didn't feel his connection to her, and I thought some scenes were weird and the pacing was off. I think I had too high of expectations, so I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book was another audiobook, and that is All Lined Up by Cora Carmack. This is the first book in her Rusk University series, and it reminded me why I love this series so much, which I've been saying about every single book I've been listening to on audiobook. This is about Dallas, who is the football coach's daughter, and her dad just started to be the football coach for Rusk University because they had a really bad season last year, and so she's used to moving from place to place as her dad takes teams that are really bad and brings them back up. And she, at her high school, dated the quarterback for a couple years, and he was just an awful guy, and he's actually the quarterback at the university she goes to. He's a year ahead of her, and she meets this guy at a party, and she is super into him. Carson actually is a transfer student. He started out at like a community college, and then he's coming here to Rusk University to play football, but Levi, who was Dallas's ex, is like the star quarterback, so he feels like he has no chance, but he puts in so much heart and effort into it, and he really likes Dallas. And when Dallas figures out that Carson's actually a football player, they are like, we cannot be together, but they really like each other. I love this book so much. 5 out of 5 stars again. It's just reminds me why I love college sports romances so much, and I could not get enough of this, that I'm already listening to book 2 right now, and hopefully going to continue on the series on audiobook. The next book I read was part of my Read All Day vlog, which I'll link down below. This is one of the books I had to finish that day, and it is One and Only by Jenny Holiday. This is book 1 in the Bridesmaids Behaving Badly series. Book 2 just came out this past week, and this is about Jane, whose best friend's getting married, and the bride is on a DIY rampage, wanting them to like spray paint teapots and like do all these crazy things, and Jane is like, I've had enough, and she's a writer, and so like her friend's like, oh, well, you have a flexible schedule, you need to help me now. And Jane's like, I really need to write, it's a real job. But no one seems to understand that, and so they need someone to babysit the groom's brother, who is coming back from being in the military, and he has a bad boy reputation, and so Jane said, oh, I'll do it, how hard can that be? And they have a little fun game going on where Jane is determined not to leave him alone, and Cameron's like, I just got back from being on duty, I need some food and some girls. And Jane kind of throws a wrench in those plans, and he is not impressed with Jane at all when they first meet, but then she grows on him, and it's super cute. And Cameron is a character that a lot of bad things are said about him, but they're not true, but he doesn't take it upon himself to make that known, so he really is a really good guy and just has a bad reputation even though he doesn't deserve it, and I love learning about him. I love this book. 5 out of 5 stars. It did take place in Canada too. I don't know what it is about me reading Canadian books this month, but I loved it. The next book I read was The Cottages at Silver Beach by Rayanne Thane, and this one's about a girl named Megan who owns these cottages because like I think her grandmother owned them or something, and so she is owning them. She's a photographer, so she really wanted to travel the world and be a photographer, but 7 years ago her brother's wife went missing, and everybody thought her brother did it, but they had no proof, and so she stayed home to help her brother take care of his 2 kids and fulfill his obligations, so she couldn't go out and do what she wanted. Elliot Bailey is an FBI agent who is on leave, and he writes true crime novels, and he's staying at her cottage, and Megan used to date his brother until he passed away, and Elliot's known as Mr. Roboto because he is so unemotional and harsh towards people, but he's going to try to figure out what happened to the wife of Megan's brother, and Megan and him start spending time together. And that's where the story is. I will say the ending was really unsatisfying because they're going to explain more things in the next book, which I hate when books do that, but I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was really a cute romance. The next book I also read on that vlog where I did a read all day, which again I said is linked down below, and that is Moonshot by Alessandra Torrey. This is hands down my favorite book of the month. This is about a girl who grew up in the Yankees baseball world. Her dad is a Yankees pitcher, and when she was young she had to go and stay with her dad, and she literally has gone to every single game since. She's a ball girl, and what happens is Chase Stern, the notorious playboy who got kicked off his other team for doing something really bad, is now playing for the Yankees. In Ty is the girl's name. She idolizes him. He is like the best baseball player at this time, and the dad is like, no, you cannot come to our games anymore. He is going to try to get you, and I feel like you're gonna fall for it. You can't do that. And Ty is determined to say, I'm not gonna fall for him. I'm going to games. I've never missed a game. And she gets her way, and she falls for Chase. And this book has so much angst. Let me tell you, there's something that happens in the middle that threw me for a loop that I was freaking out about, and then there's a murder mystery at the end. This book was everything, and I was obsessed with it, and so many emotions, and I couldn't put it down. I read it in a day, and it was fabulous. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was an audiobook, and that is Be With Me by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is book 2 in this series, and this is about Cameron's sister. Cameron was in book 1, so Teresa is in love with Cameron's best friend Jace, and they had a hot kiss a year ago, and now it is their romance. I enjoyed this, but I think it went on like way too long. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I feel like it just like, I hate books where like they get together around like the middle and then it's like everything trying to keep them apart for the rest of the book, and I feel like that's how this book was. I did feel really bad for Teresa because she was a dancer and she had an injury that didn't let her dance, and there was crazy mystery going on thrown in there too that like completely freaked me out when it was happening, and so it was a cute romance. I kind of wanted more, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book was an audiobook I listened to, and that is The Baller by Vi Keelan. This is about a news reporter named Delilah, and she is trying to make a name for herself in the sports world, and she is in the locker room interviewing a player named Brody, and he is like one of the best football players of the time right now, and he whips off his towel during the interview and is just really messing with her and trying to get under her skin, trying to get her to date him, and she's determined to say no. But obviously there's an attraction, and so this is their romance. And I will say, like, halfway through the book, a random person's perspective was thrown in there, which I thought really changed the tone of the story from a funny rom-com to something really serious. And I enjoyed that, but I feel like I wasn't as into it as I wanted it to be. I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I still really enjoyed it, but it turned into a really serious book, and that's not what I'm used to from this author, but it was still really good, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book I read this month was Hooked by Carla Sorensen and Whitney Barbetti. This is a criminal romance, so I feel like if you like the show Imposters, you would like this. Lucy is a criminal. She is just gotten out of jail. She owes her ex-drug dealer money, and she was a drug dealer, and so she's trying to get money, and she goes to group therapy as part of her parole and sees X there who is new, and he's obviously rich, so she is determined to break into his house and steal something so she can pay back her drug dealer. And the story goes on from there. X and Lucy have a romance, and it was funny and far-fetched and interesting. I feel like this would never happen in real life, but this was very comedic because Lucy's a very funny character. She doesn't take anything seriously. She's very self-deprecating and doesn't feel like she could ever be with someone like X because he's rich and has somewhere going in life, and she is a nobody who was in prison and owes a ton of people money, and so she can't really trust people because of why she went to prison. But it was a really fun, cute romance, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And that is my June wrap-up. Sorry if I talked fast or was going too fast, but I did not want this to be forever long, and I read 17 books, so I think like 5 of those were audiobooks. I am loving audiobooks now, but I have a lot of fun things planned to read for July. So let me know down below what you read this month, what your favorite was. I would love to hear. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye.